Welcome to part 2 of our 3-part series, Pandemics, the Key to Prevention. In the previous episode, we learned that the current global pandemic, COVID-19, is a zoonotic disease, meaning it came from animals. We have also learned that over the past century, zoonoses, animal diseases transmissible to humans, have caused almost all of the world's pandemics, in which hundreds of millions of people have died. COVID-19 has been traced to bats, which then transferred the virus to pangolins, or scaly anteaters. These animals were being sold for human consumption in a wet market in Wuhan, China. But how does such transmission between animals occur? Dr. Peter Lee, an associate professor of political science at the University of Houston, an expert on China's wild animal trade, describes the conditions in a wet market. The cages are stacked one over another. Animals at the bottom are often soaked with all kinds of liquid, animal excrement, pus, blood, whatever the liquid they're receiving from the animals above. It is through these bodily fluids, Dr. Lee explains, that viruses can readily be transferred from one species of animal to another. But how are these viruses transferred from animals to human beings? Such transmission can occur in a number of ways, but the most common is when a human comes into direct contact with an infected animal, particularly with their bodily fluids. When an animal is slaughtered, blood, pus, excrement, and saliva are all excreted. Transmission can thus readily occur by handling an infected animal and then touching the eyes or nose, or through consumption. Once a zoonotic virus has been transmitted from an infected animal to even one person, it can then spread rapidly to other human beings. Over the past century, almost every pandemic has been a zoonosis. Swine flu, H1N1, emerged from pigs, MERS from camels, avian flu from poultry, AIDS from chimpanzees, Ebola from bats and chimpanzees, and SARS from civet cats. World authorities and organizations have become increasingly alarmed about the ever-increasing number of zoonotic diseases. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, states, "The world is currently facing an unprecedented increase of emerging and re-emerging animal diseases and zoonoses." The World Health Organization has also expressed concern, estimating that approximately 1 billion illnesses and millions of deaths occur each year from zoonoses, and that 60% of all existing infectious diseases in the world came from animals. What is even more alarming is the number of new diseases, such as COVID-19, that are surfacing. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, estimates that currently 3/4 of all new or emerging diseases derive from animals. The World Organization for Animal Health, OIE, states, "Given the similarities between COVID-19 and the emergence of other human infectious diseases at the human-animal interface, the OIE is working to better understand the dynamics and risks." After realizing that COVID-19 started through the trade and consumption of wild animals, the government of China quickly passed new legislation entitled "Comprehensively Prohibiting the Illegal Trade of Wild Animals," eliminating the bad habits of wild animal consumption and protecting the health and safety of the people. The law bans the sale of all non-aquatic wild animals. In addition, China temporarily closed many of its wet markets. Is a temporary closure of wet markets enough? What should be done to prevent future outbreaks? What government action is necessary? We'll explore these questions right after this important message. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television. Noble viewers, welcome back to our program. As a consequence of COVID-19 pandemic, China temporarily closed some of its live animal markets, but did not ban them. Many believe far bolder action is required, even on a global level. These so-called wet markets, where live animals are slaughtered on site and sold for human consumption, exist not only in China, but can also be found in many other countries around the world, including the USA. New York City, for example, has an estimated 85 live animal markets, one of which sells as many as 100,000 live chickens during a festival weekend. Recently, activists gathered in New York City to ask city and state health officials to close these markets down.
All live markets!
This is Donnie Moss with TheirTurn.net at City Hall in New York, where about 20 activists have gathered to ask city and state health officials to shut down the estimated 85 live animal markets in New York.
COVID-19 has been confirmed as starting in a live animal market in China.
They're petri dishes. They are breeding ground for bacteria. Anyone who steps foot into these markets, they will track the bacteria, the animal's entrails, the blood, the feces. They will track that on the subways into their homes, their schools, to medical facilities, into their work.
The fact that these are still operating in our city is absolutely abhorrent.
Ag and markets! Stand by markets!
Outbreaks like swine flu, avian flu, mad cow disease, SARS, coronavirus. What they all have in common is animal consumption.
CDC! It's an emergency!
The only way to guarantee that this never happens again is to shut down all slaughterhouses.
Other groups in the US are also demanding the closure of wet markets. The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, a US organization with a membership of 12,000 doctors, has filed a legal petition with the US Surgeon General that states live animal markets are a welcome mat to coronaviruses. The failure to close a single live animal market in China led to a pandemic that has closed countless businesses worldwide and led to an enormous death toll and economic havoc. PCRM is demanding that all live animal markets in the US be shut down immediately. They also recommend a shift to a plant-based diet. Dr. Anthony Fauci, one of the leading COVID-19 experts in the US and a member of the Coronavirus Task Force, also recently called for a ban of wet markets. In an April 2020 interview with Fox and Friends, he stated, "I think we should shut down those things, wet markets, right away. It boggles my mind how when we have so many diseases that emanate out of that unusual human-animal interface, that we don't just shut it down." I don't know what else has to happen to get us to appreciate that, because what we're going through right now is a direct result of that. This view was echoed by the highly respected US Senator, the Honorable Lindsey Graham, who is calling for worldwide government action, stating, "How many times do we have to go through this before we change our behavior? It's just not in China. It's in Southeast Asia. It's in Africa. We have wet markets where wild exotic animals are being slaughtered and consumed on the same premises as chicken and pork, and it gets into the stream of the animals and eventually the human beings." The global animal rights organization, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, is sending a petition to the World Health Organization calling for a closure of all live animal markets in the world. The petition states, "COVID-19 and SARS have taught us that immediately closing off these sources of infectious diseases is an absolute necessity, and doing so will help prevent future outbreaks, since live animal markets provide diseases with the perfect opportunity to spread from other animals to humans. But is a ban on the wild animal trade and a closure of all the live animal markets around the world enough? Supreme Master Ching Hai tells us it is not, and frequently reminds us that the true cause of all pandemics is meat consumption, as in a 2009 conference in Thailand.
According to the scientific study of these fatal diseases, all of them originated from human hunting or slaughter of animals for meat. Other pandemics, such as the 1918 outbreak, in which 50 to 100 million people perished, and the one that continues to claim lives today, have their source in animals being raised to be slaughtered for meat consumption. So you see, the question is not so much whether these terrible diseases come from wild or livestock animals, but that they truly came from animals. They also are based in humans killing for meat, a so-called food that is being scientifically shown to be a poison. This is the activity that must cease for the betterment of humanity, animals, and our world. The meat eating must stop.
The major pandemics and its consequences are summarized along with the estimated global economic costs below. Spanish flu 1918 to 1920, an estimated 500 million cases and 50 to 100 million deaths, with an economic cost of $3 billion plus, which was about 5% of the global GDP at that time. Asian flu 1957 to 1958, over 500 million cases and 1 to 4 million deaths, with an economic cost of over $9 billion. Hong Kong flu 1968 to 1969, over 500 million cases and 1 to 4 million deaths, with an economic cost of more than $34 billion till today, which includes the vaccination cost. HIV, AIDS, 1970s, and to date, an estimated 74.9 million cases and 32 million deaths and counting. The economic cost is $144 billion till 2020 and counting. Ebola virus disease, 1976 and 2014 to ongoing, an estimated 34,593 cases and 15,239 deaths as of 2020 and counting, with an economic cost of at least $53 billion. Variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, mad cow disease, 1986 to ongoing, 231 cases and counting, 100% of cases fatal, with an economic cost of at least $30 billion and counting. SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, 2002 to 2004, 8,098 cases and 774 deaths, 10% of cases fatal. The estimated economic cost is over $40 billion. Avian flu, 2003 to ongoing, 861 cases and 455 deaths and counting, 50% of cases fatal. The estimated economic cost is at least $1.9 billion and counting. Swine flu, 2009 to 2010, up to an estimated 1.4 billion cases and 575,000 deaths, with an economic cost of over $50 billion. MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, 2012 to ongoing, 2,506 cases and 862 deaths as of January 15, 2020 and counting. 35% of cases fatal. The estimated economic cost is at least $10 billion and counting. COVID-19, 2019 to ongoing, an estimated 4.9 million cases and 329,300 deaths as of May 22, 2020 and counting. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, stated that COVID-19 could cost $9 trillion in 2 years.
Precious viewers, thank you for your company today.